The title does telegraph the intent of this video, but let's hold the substance for a moment while I offer some context and validation for my opinion. I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. I've read nearly every book and every comic. I've researched unused scripts and watched numerous experts online analyze the franchise. And thanks to my creation of the Alien Fusion RPG in the 90s, both fans and friends know that I'm an authority and one of the foremost experts on the setting. There is no objectivity regarding my judgment. I am instinctively favorable of entries in this franchise, except AVP Requiem, because that sucked Odin's balls, even to the extent of being a longtime defender of both Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, although maybe less for the latter. I feel it important to establish that, to add as much weight as possible to this statement. Alien Covenant is garbage, and no one is angrier than me. I watched it on the first Saturday amidst initial positive reviews, not long after the blowback started, but not from critics, as it remains circa 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, but from fans, where it currently stands around 63%. This is in contrast to the financial dumpster fire of King Arthur Legend of the Sword, languishing with a critical consensus of 28% against a fan consensus of 78%. There's a similar deviation with Batman v Superman as well, but with Alien Covenant the divergence is reversed. Fan reaction on IMDb is also trending on the low side. This is not validation, more confusion as to the source of the variance. One could accuse with Batman v Superman and King Arthur the more aristocratic critics are analyzing the film on sophisticated metrics regarding plot structure and originality, but with Covenant, it's the fans complaining about predictable plot points, hollow characters, and flimsy effects. What happened? Did someone ghost direct this film? Covenant feels like fan service, making Prometheus both better in contrast and worse in how it destroys all groundwork laid in the previous movie. The music, plot beats, even whole scenes appear stolen from better entries in the series. The effects are shockingly bad in places, the story was entirely predictable, and most of the characters were utterly useless. There was so much potential. I had read what Scott had intended with Paradise, the original name of the film, and none of that can be found here. This is not just a bad film for the franchise, it's a bad film for Ridley Scott. I'm talking white squall bad. Love it or hate it, Prometheus had a point. It asked questions. It didn't answer them all, but I was invested in the idea that said questions would be addressed later. With Covenant, it's not only as bad a follow-up as Alien Resurrection, but it's also bad in a Transformers Revenge of the Fallen sort of way, where you start to think the writers had a stroke at some point during production. Characters act in a way necessary for the plot, rather than realistically. Although fully aware the audience knows more about the dangers around our heroes than our heroes, said heroes appear to lack basic flight reflex, indicative in a species that survived extinction in the face of predators. These same characters also act against common sense, while the aliens act in service of the machination of the story, with consistencies in their biology ignored for the sake of suspense. If you thought the gestation rate in the first Alien vs. Predator was short. And for the first time, an Alien film concluded in the worst possible way. The entire audience saw it coming 20 minutes earlier. There was no excitement, no satisfaction, just a depressing exhale, like stabbing a whoopee cushion and letting the air leak out without a sound. And to think we lost a potential franchise here. Not Alien, I'm sure they'll squeeze a few more drops of nectar. I'm talking Prometheus. How quickly everyone forgot, or simply misunderstood what Prometheus was supposed to be, ignoring its lack of any Alien license title. Prometheus was meant to be the start of a new franchise, built from the DNA of Alien, but free from any of its canon. What started as Alien 5 in the hands of John Spathis turned into an entirely new beast under Damon Lindelof, and Ridley Scott. It was supposed to be something new, with only hints of the setting that it borrowed from. Lindelof said himself, Prometheus would never lead into Alien, it would lead into a new direction. With Covenant, this has not happened. They retconned it, ignoring whatever was intended, and instead shoehorned Prometheus back into the Alien setting where it wasn't designed to fit into in the first place. As a result, all the questions, the character arcs, or potential direction the story could have gone was abandoned. It declared anything good about Prometheus, depending on how much of it was, based on your own opinion, worthless, leaving what remained tenets of a new, revised setting. But of course, in order to make that work, the Alien setting was itself also altered to accommodate alterations clearly no one was asking for. On top of that, the film lacks much of Scott's traditional visual style. The majority of the film is set in featureless enclosed sets with little panache for framing. Alien Covenant does nearly everything wrong, making me question the longevity in this license. I was ready to defend it against the detractors, but they are unfortunately correct. And that's a pause. A moment of breath where people can step aside and digest. From here on are spoilers regarding elements of Covenant. You could consider them major spoilers, but that's giving the story too much credit, plus most of it was revealed in the trailers anyway. Firstly, every death is telegraphed several minutes before it occurs, not from mounting dread, but from cliched setup and insane character decisions. No one follows basic common sense to keep themselves and other people alive. They split up when they shouldn't, trust those undeserving, and follow orders clearly made by someone not thinking a crisis through. And there's a villain. Yes, Covenant has one, a common trope in the franchise where man is the true villain and the alien is little more than an unguided weapon resisting attempts to control it. With Covenant, they appeared to take a page from Wrath of Khan, where a previously introduced character is adjusted to be more villainous. With Khan, it made perfect sense. He was internally consistent, but with Covenant, there were logical gaps in the train of thought. I've been dancing around the topic, but let's deal with the direct spoiler in hand. The movie reveals David, the synthetic from the earlier film, was eviler than Prometheus let on, and despite his growing affection for the Shaw character in the first movie and joining her on this quest to the engineer homeworld to find out why McCain fell out of favor, instead releases the engineer bioweapon, wiping out the planet's animal kingdom. He then develops an obsession of creating his own form of life, resulting in not only the signature alien life cycle seen in other films, but the death of the Shaw character before the events of the film, denying her and us the logical plot threads established in Prometheus, a clear example of a direction change. The writers had an idea with Prometheus, a new setting not beholden to alien canon, and with Covenant they forced it back in, and in doing so felt compelled to write one main character out of the series and turn the other into a villain, and one now credited with the creation of the xenomorph. Beyond the absurd solution to a problem revolving around the alien origin we ultimately didn't require, Covenant postulates that David was able to utilize the engineer pathogen on resident life forms until creating the xenomorph and its life cycle, and was able to accomplish this with nothing in the form of equipment save for drawings, lights, clamps, and a goddamn flute. In service of plot contrivance rather than a logical story thread, David desires to release his creation among the cosmos, following the engineer's original objective to wipe out humanity, and then goes about manipulating the stupidity of the characters around him to achieve those goals. In any other situation populated by real people, this could not succeed. The plot hinges on the fact that the Covenant crew has their own synthetic, a more advanced, more compliant replication of David named Walter, who proves equally useless in warning his masters of the obvious dangers until the plot necessitates his intervention. In the end, his only function is to create that formulaic device already drained of any suspense when William Shatner did it back in the original Star Trek, of one half of identical twins trying to emulate the other. At no point did I or anyone I attended the film with fall for this, and it created an unpleasant aroma that perfumed the film's final minutes. Of course, for such a final twist to occur, an entire set of idiotic decisions must happen. If you thought not running left instead of straight was stupid in Prometheus, brace yourself. Clearly the people of this future are the result of the brain drain consequential of a Trump America. The effects of the aliens are mostly unconvincing, save for a battle occurring around a flying space crane in the film's third act, and even though we get a few establishing shots of the engineer homeworld, they lack much of the awe and wonder of Prometheus' first act. So if you didn't like that... Ultimately, I really had no problem with them deciding the new setting started in Prometheus was a dead end, and then injecting that story back into Alien. And I also get the filmmaker's goal of eventually connecting this film to Alien required explaining how an alien pathogen somehow turned into leather-wrapped eggs with four-leaf vaginas, but then to structure a story around this prerequisite by the rewriting of one character, the off-screen callous death of another, and the interdiction of new characters that act more idiotic than ones in the previous film. It shows the filmmakers took the wrong advice from criticism laid towards the previous film. They forgot why fans enjoyed this series, what made Prometheus a financial success despite criticism. Complaints included unresolved plot threads, a predictable ending, and foolish character decisions, and Covenant's response to that was to ignore those plot threads, make it more predictable with characters acting even more foolish, all the while removing everything Prometheus is trying that set it apart from the other films in the franchise. Covenant mimics Alien Resurrection in that it followed the decisive Alien 3, with producers deciding that no one wanted something different, and instead presented us a film that desperately wanted to replicate the first two films. Covenant wants to be Alien, and is so desperate for that it replicated its title card, its music, and several plot beats, returning to my previous accusation that Covenant feels more like a fan film, or a film made by an upcoming director lacking his or her personal vision. Scott brought nothing new to this table. All he did was glue puzzle pieces that didn't fit and then squinted until he had something that worked. And since critical consensus are apparently ignoring these flaws, we're likely to see a sequel that will double down on this idea, relegating the Alien franchise to playing in the same boat as the Saw films. And I love this series. The idea of developing a massive extended universe would have overjoyed me 10 years ago. And I'll probably see the next one in the theater in some misguided loyalty. but in time it will become so worn, so abrasive to its core audience, all that will remain is a series of films regarded as highly as the Resident Evil franchise. Successful, but lacking any substance of quality. Alien Covenant's biggest mistake, and the one sin I cannot forgive more than anything, and the thought I will conclude on, is that it makes the same mistake as Terminator Genisys, by making the other films around it worse. What a shame.